to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally.
For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Very good morning to you. This is Newsroom. Yes, you are watching SABC News. We'll be with you, until the SABC inquiry takes place today. Of course, it's been the most watched television here in South Africa for the last week or so. This as the Parliamentary ad hoc committee hearing into the SABC affairs continue with the inquiry into the board's fitness to hold office. So we're running a poll actually. And we're asking you, are you following the SABC board inquiry? Are you interested in it? Well, Elvis, 102 votes in. It is the most watched thing on SATV.
Most watched event, I promise you. Even 5-year-olds are watching the inquiry. So, on the question that we posed to you, 79% of you are saying, yes, we are following it. It's 102 and 21 saying we are not following it. I wonder what those the people that voted on no, what they are watching. Maybe Generations, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe they're watching reruns, or maybe they're watching the other channels in this bouquet. Anyhow, we've got tweets on that. Anyhow, yeah. Let's see what you guys are saying about us. Personally, Elvis, I'm not one to repeat or to report on oneself. I think it doesn't make sense for you to report on yourself, but I think we reflect what we do in the end.
And here we reflected with Africa saying it's very interesting. At the same time, it's horrific. So says Africa.
Ramokele says, not interested. Newsroom, I'm not interested in SABC.
I wonder why. Siafana says, yes, and I can't wait for today's inquiry. What are you waiting for, Siafana?
This one from Unati. Unati says, in Newsroom, yes, I'm following it, and I wish this year could end now. SABC inquiry, SABC 8, SABC News, yes.
Now, remember that we will go live there by 9:30, so you have to stay tuned. You don't want to miss a thing right here on your favorite channel. This is the Newsroom.
Yeah, should be more evidence, of course. An interesting development. AB de Villiers has stepped down. Some say surprisingly, some say not. Stepped down overnight as the Proteas captain, which of course makes Faf du Plessis a shoo-in for the position. A little bit later, I'll be talking to Kenda Mahamati. We'll be bringing those details on that story shortly. But Elvis, there's also other news in the world, isn't there?
That's correct. So let me give you those headlines. The parliamentary inquiry into the SABC board's fitness to hold office is expected to resume this morning after some explosive revelations by 4 of the so-called SABC 8 on the affairs of the public broadcaster. The summer-initiated death toll in the Eastern Cape has reportedly risen to 16. And several West African leaders, African Union and United Nations, are expected to meet with the Gambian president Yahya Jammeh in an effort to persuade him to give up power in that country after he lost the elections. Those are some of your headlines before we get to your news. Let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the sports world. It is absolutely shocking.
Now, a bit of a bombshell, I tell you. It wasn't just in Parliament that we're having bombs dropped. We also had AB de Villiers stepping down as Test captain. It's really going to be the focus of our sports focus for today while we chat. Yeah, and I'm sure you've got thoughts on that already.
Yeah, I do. I think it's very big of him. I think it's very big of him, and for the benefit of the teams, longer term, and also for the country. I think it's very big of him, and I hope he comes back early next month and scores a lot of runs, because that's what we need him to do.
You also mentioned, because all of his injuries that he was carrying up until now, it's probably the best thing to do is to give over, and that's very big of a man like that,
No, 100%. And so this is basically, let me bring everybody in now. We are going to be talking about all this a little bit later, just before we go to Parliament for the board's inquiry. But before that, this is what we've got for you in terms of sports today. AB de Villiers steps down as Proteas Test captain, and childhood friend and captain Faf du Plessis takes over as the permanent leader of the Proteas Test side. All this is Portugal and Real Madrid forward Cristiano Ronaldo wins the Ballon d'Or for a fourth time after winning the Champions League and European Championship in 2016.
Is FC Bayern München.
And for the third time in 4 seasons, Arsenal will face German champions Bayern Munich in the Champions League last 16. All this and more we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin, should we get there. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The South African Broadcasting Corporation is still studying a judgment today which found the appointment of Hlaudi Motsoeneng as the Group Executive for Corporate Affairs to be illegal. The DA voiced its satisfaction after the Western Cape High Court ruling that says that Motsoeneng should be removed from his office should he pitch up at Auckland Park. The ruling comes as the ad hoc committee continues with the parliamentary inquiry into the SABC's affairs and the board's fitness to hold office.
The court ruled that Motsoeneng's recent appointment to the position of Group Executive for Corporate Affairs was unlawful. It also set aside an earlier disciplinary process which exonerated Motsoeneng following the Public Protector's report in 2014.
It is declared that unless and until the negative findings against Motsoeneng in the Public Protector's report are reviewed and set aside, or unless and until Motsoeneng is exonerated from the said negative findings by way of a valid disciplinary hearing, Motsoeneng may not hold any position at all in the second respondent, the SABC.
The court says a fresh disciplinary process against Motsoeneng, should there be one, must be initiated within 2 weeks of a new board's constitution. DA leader Musi Maimane says justice has been served.
We are of the complete view today it's a victory for justice. Mr. Motsoeneng cannot work at the SABC, and ultimately I'm also glad that he personally must pay back the cost for this case so he stops litigating on the basis of the taxpayers' money.
The SABC says it's studying the judgment.
At the present moment, our lawyers have just received the judgment and they are now studying the judgment, and only after they have studied the judgment they will be in a position to advise us on the way forward. At this present moment we can't say anything further until we're given that judgment.
The court also found that the SABC and the board conducted themselves unlawfully for failing to implement the recommendations of the Public Protector's report. It says the SABC violated the Constitution by not assisting and protecting the Public Protector. The Public Protector found in 2014 that Motsoeneng was dishonest and had lied about his matric certificate. The Public Protector recommended that the SABC board take corrective action against him for this and for raising his salary illegally from 1.5 million to 2.4 million rand. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
The Guptas had attempted to take over the news operations of the SABC. Now this was heard during a parliamentary ad hoc committee hearing into the public broadcaster yesterday. Former senior managers at the public broadcaster were testifying, and according to them, basic labour relation principles were often flouted and certain appointments compromised company policy.
Sipho Masinga, a former group executive for technology, dropped a bombshell on the committee. He spoke of a proposed takeover of the SABC news operations by the Gupta family. Masinga was invited to a meeting with former The New Age CEO Nazim Hawa, during which this takeover was discussed.
Before the launch of the NN7, there was a meeting to try and bring a contract to take over SABC News and rebrand it. Obviously, the TNA company was going to manage it. The SABC was going to supply the staff and the buildings. They were not going to pay any rent. They were going to collect all the advertising revenue. So I knew it wasn't going to fly from the start.
Masinga says the details of this deal was composed in a 3-page contract. Earlier, Madiwe Nkosi, former general manager for labor relations, said she fell out of favor after she started questioning certain irregular practices. On one occasion, she was asked to draft papers to dismiss a colleague. She refused because the process was flawed. Nkosi says she received her instructions from former SABC COO Claudie Motswaneng.
For one reason or the other, nothing happens at the SABC without the blessing of Mr. Motswaneng.
Nkosi spoke of employees living in fear of their phones being bugged. Supporting this claim, Jabulani Mabaso, the former group executive for human resources. He said whenever he needed to talk to someone, he would step out of his office. Mabaso said this fear was common.
So you all feared him, in a way?
If we were to put it that way, yes. I mean, I think he's a very powerful man. He's powerful if he cannot be called to order by the board.
Mabaso had initially asked the committee if he could give his submission in camera, but the committee declined.
But the more I sat here and I listened, the more it made sense, or I'm convinced that, you know, the national cause is more noble than the personal cause. It might have brought you some personal questions, but I think South Africans are better informed because we insisted you do this thing publicly.
Earlier in the meeting, Smith shared a letter sent to him by the SABC in which the broadcaster said it would lead its own evidence as well as cross-examine any witnesses. If the committee failed to comply with this, the SABC would pursue further legal action. Smith, supported by the rest of the committee, said Parliament would not be dictated to by the SABC. He said the committee would respond to the SABC's lawyers by the close of business. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
In turn, the SABC's economics editor, Tandeka Kubula, told the inquiry that journalists were frustrated about a decision not to cover violent protests in the run-up to the August local elections. Kubula is one of 4 SABC journalists testifying on behalf of the so-called SABC 8.
For us to fulfill our public service mandate, we need a free press. This freedom, borrowing from the Bill of Rights, provides for independent scrutiny of the forces that shape society and is essential to realizing the promise of a democracy. It enables citizens to make informed judgments on issues of the day. And for example, on the day that I so pleaded with the head of news to allow our journalists who were actually shouting at me in the newsroom to do their jobs as the capital city was burning, people needed to know whether to send their kids to school that day. They needed to know which routes to take into the city. They needed to know where they could fetch water in the context. So we were not allowed to cover this as we should as journalists and provide the public service.
SAFM Current Affairs Executive Producer Krivani Pillay said that the cost of not defending an independent public broadcaster would be insurmountable. And not speaking out would mean that 20 million South Africans would be deprived of information.
We chose to stand up because we felt that our newsroom had become a source of derision, despair, and criticism from the people we are fundamentally accountable to, and that is the South African public. If we didn't stand up, the costs of not defending an independent public broadcaster would be insurmountable. If we didn't stand up, we wouldn't be able to practice journalism with integrity. And if we didn't stand up, those in positions of power would grab more and more of our sacred editorial space until there was nothing left. If I didn't stand up, I would be complicit in depriving more than 20 million South Africans who solely rely on the SABC as their primary source of news and information, of balanced, factual information compiled by journalists dedicated to objectivity. For all these reasons, this is why we stood up.
Another SABC reporter, Lucanio Talata, gave details of instructions that disregarded journalistic principles. This, he said, came from, amongst others, Simon Tebele, Notando Maseko and Nyana Molete.
I've received phone calls from basically everybody in Johannesburg. Notando Maseko, Nyana, Simon, all of them have at various stages said, no, we can't go with that. You must use this soundbite. A couple of years ago, Mr. Mutwening had come and he had appeared before the Portfolio Committee. And he had responded to the committee on the issue of the New Age newspaper. The committee had asked him about the deal. And I had felt that Mr. Mutwening hadn't really responded, hadn't really addressed the issue that was being asked by the committee members. So I didn't use him in my package because he hadn't said anything of substance. Former regional editor Jeffrey Twala, he called me out of the band practice that I must come back to Parliament, to the office, and I must rework my package and include Mr. Mutwening. I tried to argue and I said, sir, but Mr. Mutwening did not say anything of substance to the committee. He said, no, I must use him. Eventually, I settled on a soundbite where he said, the New Age, this is me quoting him, he said, the New Age, as you know, they are new, like the New Age. Because he hadn't said anything that I could use, but because that was the most coherent soundbite or anything that I could use of him, I then had to use him in my package. One of my colleagues about two Decembers ago was people that claimed to have been from SABC's forensic department walked into the office while the office was full with journalists, came and grabbed her laptop, unplugged the laptop, and confiscated it. Eventually, at the end, they told her that she had been suspected of leaking information to a Democratic Alliance MP. Now, what the forensic guys had found was that this particular MP had sent an email to her. Right? So because an MP had sent an email to a SABC journalist, the forensic guys came, confiscated her laptop, and interrogated her for 2 hours.
Meanwhile, one of the SABC 8, Vuyo Mvoko, testified that the SABC has allowed resources to be used towards building a rival channel, ANN7, and that resources for shows such as Morning Live pay for TNA breakfast, while money that the TNA breakfast make does not go to the SABC. Mvoko also added that the ratings of the SABC News have declined.
They've allowed SABC money to be used to build a rival channel, ANN7. Morning Live resources get diverted to pay for the production costs of those TNA breakfasts that you see. Yet the money that the owners of TNA make, none of it, not a cent, goes to the SABC. From the millions they make through sponsorship to the tables that they sell at those breakfasts, they do not spend, they do not take any of that to the SABC, except perhaps to the people who make things happen for them. SABC News spends 2, 3, sometimes $500,000 for one of those TNA breakfasts, I'm told, to put it on air, because we pay for the production costs. We pay for the presenters to be there, for the presenters, for all those people, that whole tribe that has to travel to Bloemfontein or to the Northern Cape to do those broadcasts. The owners of TNA don't pay any of that money. And they've been open. When they couldn't succeed in taking over the news of the SABC, they put up a rival channel to take on the SABC, but it's the SABC that has to pay for its downfall and to build this alternative channel. Now, the SABC does periodic appraisals of the performances of its news bulletins and its current affairs programs. Those ARs, if you were to ask the SABC to furnish you with that information, will show you how we are bleeding, how we are ceding ground to competition.
Now, remaining with the inquiry, the SABC board chairperson, Mbalaheni Magube, is due to testify before the ad hoc committee on the SABC this afternoon. As you know, it's probing the affairs of the corporation and the board's fitness to hold office. SABC Company Secretary Teresa Geldenhuys will also take the stand. Magube, Geldenhuys, former board member Bongani Kumalo, and the former head of procurement, Madodo Shushu, and the four people expected before the ad hoc committee today. Shushu initially asked to testify behind closed doors, but the committee declined his request. Magube is due to testify at 4 o'clock this afternoon, but we'll keep you posted because we will go there live and we'll find out about the time schedule as we continue. As you know, we're running a poll. Let's go over to Eben to find out what is happening there.
Yeah, Elvis, lots of views on what's happening or what's been going on within the doors of the SABC. Let's take a look at that poll, what the numbers are saying now, because we're asking you, are you watching? Are you following this? It seems to be the biggest story in South Africa in December of 2016 as we count down. Are you following the SABC board inquiry? 128 votes are in, 84% are saying yes, we are following it. We are riveted. It's all over social media. It is the biggest story around right now. But let's take your views. Let's see what you guys are telling us or saying to us what we should be doing. Sipo Mokoro says, Newsroom, yes, I'm following it and I'm happy because that ad hoc committee members are united and they want to rebuild the image of the SABC, says Sipo Mokoro. Christian Kleinans talks about Newsroom's SABC inquiry. It brings tears to our eyes to see that there are still good people that fight evil. We stand with you. Rash says, while SABC had paint a picture of gloom, SABC are providing excellent service without the disgruntled journalists. Africa Magumu says, very interesting, at the same time horrific. Yes, that's kind of the view that I think the prevailing view inside the SABC as well. But let's have a look at this hour. What else you should be looking out for? Which are the hashtags you should be interacting with? Of course, the one is SABC Inquiry. The SABC 8, well, they said to be on fire yesterday. They received much support from the public and other media houses all around. Of course, the High Court also ruled that Mr. Claudio Mutsuneng should not report for work duty today. In some less, well, it's in other news, people are speculating about, well, an image that was posted by Minnie Dlamini. Did she say yes to the ring to be a brand ambassador, or is she engaged? And not to Casper Nieuwest. Well, the things that make the news at this time of the year. That's a less serious news. Now, more serious story. Let's carry on. Gambian President Yahya Jammeh has not accepted his defeat after losing the election vote earlier this year and is challenging the system, but voters are not happy about his change. Daj Swagger says Gambians tested freedom for a whole week and you think you can just take that back. Yahya Jammeh, change is inevitable and sooner than you think. Then we go to India, where Cyclone Vada has killed about 10 people now. Schools are closed and thousands have been evacuated in Chennai the capital of the southern state of Tamil Nadu, as well as neighboring Andhra Pradesh. Now let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from SA for Madiba's Vision, and it's captioned disgraceful. Now if we go full screen, you'll know what this is all about. There's a big social media storm around Mr. Hannes Lottering, who said the following when he upon the picture of Siya Khaleesi and his wife. He says, "I pray that this does not happen in my family. Honest to God, I would not know what to do." Shame on you, Hannes Lottering. Of course, he's being shamed on social media as we speak, taking a beating on social media, actually. Now, our comment of the day comes from our former assistant coach of the Proteas, Vincent Barnes, at Vincent Barnes 50, who says, "Leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others." Congrats to Faf. We're talking about the Protea caption, and of course the hashtag there is team culture, which in the end is what Faf du Plessis managed to change almost overnight. Big ups to AB de Villiers for stepping down and seeing that there's been a momentum shift within the team. Now we go quick roundup through the courts in South Africa. In Cape Town, of course, the High Court is expected to hear a case around whether or not the Dagga Act is constitutional. Yes, the matter will be heard by a full bench with 3 judges. This matter will have far-reaching implications as smoking dagga, or marijuana, for those of you that don't know, is still illegal here in South Africa. Now, we'll keep you updated on this case because it is a big one. And whatever developments come out of it, we'll try and maybe look at it a little bit more in depth towards the end of the week or even next week. Now, we've asked you the question, what do you think of AB de Villiers stepping down as Proteas captain? Let's have a look at some of your comments with regards to what AB's done in the last 24 hours. Oh, we don't have it ready. Okay, let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have more as we count down to the SABC inquiry.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. He must fire the principal.
Here too, similar sentiments of underlying racism.
It just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
Welcome back. Now, in a short while, we'll be going to the ad hoc committee in Parliament, but you have to stay tuned for that very, very shortly. Now, let's continue with more news. The summer initiation death toll in the Eastern Cape has reportedly risen to 16. The MEC for Traditional Affairs in the province, Fikile Kasa, says that the Chris Hani district has reported 5 deaths, followed by the Alfred Nzo and the OR Tambo districts with 4 each. The OR Tambo District Initiation Forum in the Eastern Cape says that summer is not an ideal season for circumcision. The MEC has sent condolences to the families of those who have passed. Meanwhile, 26 initiates died during this year's winter season.
The families who have lost their children is to say, yes, our plan was to have this safe passage. Now we have got this sad experience. We are with them in their grief, and we hope that as we celebrate with those whose children will come back safe, will also be remembering those who have lost their sons.
The 10th National Congress of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa kicked off in Cape Town amid calls for the rejection of the recently proposed national minimum wage and speeding up the formation of a new workers' union federation to challenge COSATU's dominance in the workplace.
NUMSA showed a strong force with more than 1,000 delegates in attendance of its 10th Congress. The president of NUMSA opened it with scathing attacks on his former tripartite alliance partners, especially COSATU. Andre Shirwa told delegates that COSATU is dead and it is about time to form a new workers' union federation. He totally rejected the proposed minimum wage.
This is a pocket money for children of Cyril Ramaphosa. He is saying it's good for workers. It will assist many workers. Comrades, this conference must pronounce on the national minimum wage and define the 3.5 proclaimed national minimum wage by Cyril Ramaphosa and his ANC as an insult to all workers of this country who are insulted. The workers in Marikana, Mambush and the rest died calling for 12.5 per month. Is it not what we should be talking about as a start if somebody wants to talk about national minimum wage?
Delegates urged Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan to change what they called anti-workers neoliberal economic policies and adopt workers-friendly policies with strong government intervention in the economy. But Gordhan showed little interest in acceding to their demands.
We have to operate in a real world situation on your behalf as well, and on the behalf of 55 million South Africans, to make sure that in a very difficult and changing global environment, we do what we can as the National Treasury and the Ministry and as government more generally to steer the economy in the right way, even under some very difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Other cabinet ministers and invited international guests will also address the NUMSA Congress, which ends on Thursday. Manilisi Tubase, SABC News, Cape Town.
South Africa created 93,000 jobs in the third quarter. That's the good news. However, Stats SA's latest quarterly employment statistics report shows the weak economy is weighing on job creation. Key industries such as manufacturing and transport lost up to 3,000 jobs each.
A small shift in employment figures. 93,000 new jobs were recorded in the third quarter. The increase was largely driven by the 2016 local government elections. The mining industry employed 2,000 more people in the third quarter.
We have seen that jobs have increased, but largely on the back of the local government elections, where 63,000 of those were employed in the local government elections. It's been extra budgetary activities such as elections and the university, 7,000 from universities. So that giving us about 93,000 quarter on quarter in terms of job increases.
The main industries performed poorly.
In the manufacturing sector, quarter on quarter, we saw 3,000 jobs being lost, and over the past year, 23,000 jobs being lost. And this is the sector that the authorities are trying to focus on to re-industrialize the economy. But what we are seeing is a continuing de-industrialization of the economy.
Despite the jobs increase for the third quarter, the overall economic picture remains gloomy.
Confidence is very important, but confidence is itself being affected by the recognition on the part of the players in the economy that without appropriate outcomes in education and skills development, and without an appropriate improvement in the industrial relations environment between workers and employers, you are unlikely to really see the economic growth rate of the country improving.
The economy grew by just 0.2% in the third quarter. Sipho Stirman, SABC News in Pretoria.
Staying with the unemployment rate in the Eastern Cape, they are one of the highest at over 29% unemployment. The Raym Schlaba Skills Training Centre in Port Elizabeth has managed to bring this number down marginally. It's trained over 1,000 disadvantaged students in the past 10 years.
This looks like just another busy day in the life of a carpenter. But this is part of 18-year-old Vuyo Smith's training, a woodwork program. Vuyo is one of the many Eastern Cape underprivileged youth to benefit from the Raym Schlaba Skills Training Program. He is from the Maranatha Children's Home.
There was also a girl in our skills center. Our youth children's home was also here doing needlework, so every time we come and drop, I used to see Raym Schlaba doing woodwork and hospitality. So I started to think, okay, maybe also next year I'm going to also train apply here. So that's how I came here.
It started 10 years ago, aimed at assisting children from children's home to obtain skills which will later make them employable.
And it just absolutely roller coasted because we realized that there's such a need in the market for skilled people. So we opened it up to all the children's homes and disadvantaged youth of the community.
The centre recently held a graduation program.
I'm actually at the training now at the Radisson Hotel, 5-star. Yes. So after that, I'm hoping to maybe I'll go to Johannesburg or I'll stay there at the Radisson because I have two choices to choose on.
I'm not employed right now, but I believe that I'm going to start my own catering company and hopefully work at a very, very big hotel, maybe Radisson Blue or something.
The success of this program is measured by the number of graduates employed either in the formal sector or as entrepreneurs. Since 2006, 82% of the trainees are either employable or have ventured into the world of business. Anda Ngonji, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Now that's your news for now. Let's go over to Eben and Kendall for a quick sports wrap before we go to Parliament, just quickly.
Yeah, obviously talking about that. Let's just go to Parliament quickly to have a look. I think Vincent Smith is just taking a call. He's actually secretary's coming back in. Yeah, he's coming back after the call. But they'll be getting underway shortly. Before we go there, though, let me talk to Kenda Mahamati today because there's been a massive development in South African sport. It's not every day that the national cricket captain steps down. AB de Villiers, he's come out and he's kind of said, guys, I think it's not right for me to continue as the captain, which I think is a massive indictment of him, but also the relationship with Faf du Plessis.
I don't know about the indictment. I think it's AB de Villiers actually taking stock of the situation and taking a step back and deciding that this is what's best for the team. I'll tell you why. Considering that Hashim Amla stepped in as test captain and then decided he couldn't do it, AB was seemingly pushed into it. He took it. And now he's decided, you know what, I've been away with injury for too long. Faf is doing extremely well. He's my former captain back in school. He knows the job. Let him take over the reins and carry on as test captain. I think it's less an indictment than him actually taking stock of the situation.
It's a good indictment of the character of the man. If you listen to what I had to say, Kendall. However, let's talk about his role now, because you know on social media people are mean.
Oh, yeah.
And people are already saying, no, this is the beginning of the end for him in the national team. Sure. It's the demise, the end of, or the beginning of the end for AB de Villiers. And that AB de Villiers is now going to be playing in the Big Bash and all these kinds of things. That's not his ambition, is it?
No, 100% not. He's going to continue on as the ODI captain, I'll tell you that. And he's looking to come back early next year, probably March. And with that said, his ambition is to represent the country. He's always been first and foremost a South African and representing the country, something that he's very proud of. So I think the indictments that we're getting on social media saying that he's got the wrong character, absolutely in the wrong.
Absolutely. Looks like Faf is going to be the next guy. Let's have a look at what you guys are thinking or saying about the end of an era, but also the start of a new one. And this one, Greg Bloom says, Newsroom, I've always been an AB fan. I enjoyed the thrashing the Aussies got.
The double thrashing, he should add, both in the ODIs and in the test. Jack Donald reckons good timing. That's how it's done. I agree with that. You do it when you still have dignity. Well done. Well said, Jack Donald.
Yeah, Jack Donald on point. Unati says, I think he made the right decision to step down because he can't do it all. Yes, even AB, even Mr. Spectacular can't do it all.
And Siafana Zulesho, I think de Villiers, he took a good decision to step down because the other players, they need to put that captain armbands on.
This one from Ikononato, he says, good decision, AB. You are the best in the world. We still want to see you performing well without any pressure of being captain. That's wonderful.
Can I tell you something very quickly? Is that, okay, last one is, I have always been an AB fan. I enjoy the thrashing the Aussies got. I'll tell you what, the big thing is that when he comes back into the side, it's going to be very interesting what happens, where he steps in as a batsman.
Absolutely. Well, it changes the game for me. I think there's a future for him even having the gloves at some times in the national side with someone like Quinton de Kock then having license at the top of the order. But that's me being, of course, an out-the-box thinker, Kenda Mahamati. But thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Evan.
Of course, serious business happening in Parliament for those of you that are tuning in, specifically for the inquiry into the SABC's affairs. Let's go over to Vincent Smith in Parliament.
Thank you, sir. Professor Khumalo, please be informed that by law you are required to answer fully and satisfactorily all the questions lawfully put to you, or to produce any document that you are required to produce in connection with the subject matter of the inquiry. Notwithstanding the fact that the answer or the document could incriminate you or expose you to criminal or civil proceedings or damages. You are, however, protected in that evidence given under oath or affirmation before a House or a committee may not be used against you in any court or placed outside Parliament, except in criminal proceedings concerning a charge of perjury or a charge relating to the evidence or documents required in these proceedings. Sir, I have been reliably informed that you've chosen to take the oath. So if you could repeat after me, I swear by Almighty God, that the evidence I shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
but the truth.
Please say, so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It is now, Honorable Vanara, just after 20 past. Can we allow you to carry on until 9:30? Thank you, sir. Not 9:30, 10:30.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to Prof. Morning, sir. You have prepared a statement. Yes, sir. A 9-page statement dated the 12th of December 2016. Is that correct, Prof? Yes, sir. That statement has got 9 pages. Yes, sir. And with your permission, that statement has been circulated to the members of the committee. Are you fine with it?
I'm fine, sir, except to say that I realize that there are some additions I will have to make to the statement, and then I will send this through your good office in the course of tomorrow, in addition to this.
Thank you, Prof. Can you just explain to the committee, when did you got involved as a non-executive director with the SABC board, and how long did it last before you left?
Sir, I am grateful for the opportunity to serve as a board member on the SABC. I started in October 2013, and I came all the way until the first week of January 2015. So I've served for a little over a year, and then left. I left the board about two years ago.
At the time, Ms. Ellen Zandile Shabalala would have been the chairperson of the board, is that correct?
Yes, yes, sir. I was under the leadership of Ms. Shabalala.
The group CEO at the time would have been Ms. Mahobo, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
At the bottom of the first page of your statement,
Yes, sir.
to the top of page 2,
Yes.
you're sharing with the committee your experience and background in governance-related matters.
Yes, sir.
Can you take the committee through that process?
Yes. Through the chair, I state that I am a very well experienced business person, and that I have over many years served on a number of boards in large corporations, including public enterprises, and I underlined public enterprises. I've also worked as an executive in certain large South African public enterprises portfolios. I was also at one stage a chairman of Transnet. I also state, Mr. Chairman, that I ventured into the private sector where I was a managing director of a property company. I also was part of the formation of the past national lottery operator, Kitani, that I operated and led. I led and operated as chairman and chief executive. Then later on, I relinquished the position of of chairman for good governance. I was responsible for putting together the board. I led the putting together of the board of directors of that company, as well as setting the committees of the board to support the board, all the required committees of the board. And then later on, I was the head of the executive. The reason, sir, Honorable Advocate Venara, I put this in my statement is because it's very important that one brings into focus the differentiation of functions or the protocol of governance in companies. And in this particular case, I'll look at public enterprises because there are points that I make about the different role players in the governance of state-owned enterprises. The board has a responsibility to supervise management, to supervise the executive. It forms the link between the shareholder or the shareholder representative and the executive. It is the one that goes into a compact with the shareholder through the shareholder representative. It is the one that receives presentations of strategy, strategic analysis, strategy, proposed strategy to approved, as well as the budget or the financial plan of the organization. And then the responsibility of the executive is to manage. I am pointing out, sir, the importance of having come up the ranks of corporates, having experience being an operative, being a manager, being an executive director, being a non-executive director, and of course, in other parts of my life, I act as a shareholder. In this particular case, we ordinarily refer to as to shareholder representatives or shareholders. That hierarchy is very important because there you find the importance of differentiation of functions.
Thanks, Prof.
Thank you.
Informed by this wealth of experience that you possess, in page 3 of the statement, you point out to certain concerns that you had observed at the SABC. Can you take the committee through those concerns, sir?
I'll go through them one by one. They start with failure to observe the differentiation of functions and therefore poor management of boundaries between the board and executives. and I state that the board should oversee and supervise the organization, and the executive should implement the board's mandates to manage the organization and operationalize the strategies. I state that management and the board, in the case of the organization in question.
I'm so sorry, Prof.
Yes, sir.
I've just received a message asking you just to move the mic slightly, or you speaking into the mic is distorting some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You could,
Okay.
I don't know how
Slightly
to do it.
to the side. Am I too
I'm
loud?
not sure. They were saying you were too close to the mic. Yes.
Let me move it a bit
Thank
away.
you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I state that in this particular case, there existed an anomaly of a hostility or a tension in terms of the relationship between the board and the executive. And as we go down, we will look at the dynamics that brought that about. And we cite lack of discipline among certain members of the board and management, and the inability to manage the executive as a result of certain factors. And I point out the need to realize that the chairman of the board is the leader of the board, the leader of governance, and the chief executive is the leader of management. And I point out the importance of these two parties working together for good order in an organization, which was not always the case at the SABC.
Prof.
Did I stop too early, sir?
Sorry?
Did I stop too early? Maybe yes.
No, you were perfectly well within your boundaries to stop, Prof. The board support to its CEO and his or her management team is critical. Can you share with the committee your own experience and observations during your tenure of how the board, in your view, did the board support the group's CEO at the time, as well as her management team?
When we started with great enthusiasm, and we were full of energy. It was very clear that there was assembled a board with a good combination of skills, with a lot of experience, and with knowledge. And above all, there was commitment to make it work, to stabilize the organization and to achieve the needed turnaround. But it did not last for a long time before we saw some cracks emerging. And that was as a result of the fact that there had been a succession of failing boards which had collapsed, and there were
looking for a restaurant, public transport, or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA Parliamentary?
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the Parliamentary case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
A time and a place to relax and disconnect from the world as you recharge your mind, body and spirit. The Fortune Spa in KwaZulu-Natal offers that and more.
We are a spa in Africa, and I was lucky enough to know Elliot Ndlovu, who's a traditional healer. He's both in Inyanga and a spiritual healer. Elliot came to me and he said, John, if you're going to be doing anything, he said, think about me as well. So I did. And Elliot gave us a lot of advice about traditional plants. And we looked at these plants and we saw which of the plants grow well here and which of them could be used in products that we make. So all of our own amenities in the hotel are made from the plants that we grow here.
We do a sort of fair range of treatments, all your normal massage, manis, pedis, all your usual ones. But we also incorporate a few other ones that are more traditional because we do incorporate Elliot Ndlovu, who's our traditional healer, into the spa treatments. So we kind of put our own little twist on a few things. For instance, our massages, instead of using your traditional sweet almond or grapeseed, we use either our Artemisia or our wild dacha oil. There's a couple of clients that are a little bit wary, but most of them come around and think it's an enjoyable treatment. And most of them love our wraps and teas and little other extras that we do.
When I studied, when I was trained by my ancestors underwater, that's where all my ancestors told me that's what I must do. That in my future, after becoming a traditional healer, I must grow herbs, I must teach people, I must live ukuthi ngitshala amayeza esintu ngiwasebenzise ngesintshonalanga, like propagation, ngiwadayise and ngikama product amatiya nama-cosmetic product. Then I studied from there. I was lucky that kwafika uJohn lapha eScott sibanibani ngoba utshala izinto ukwafika lapha eplazini sinenkinga wenza i-profit ukuthi one day we're going to start a spa and this kind of business. Now we want to start it. Can we be the part of it? Because this is what came to your profit. Ekhaya le ngistarte khona. Mina ngiqala ukusebenza, I started working at home in 1990. I started to have white people there, 80%. Ngifike la about 10 to 15 years ago.
welcome back. Very good morning if you've just joined us. Just gone 10 o'clock Central African time right here on Newsroom. Yes, of course, we're in Parliament with the SABC inquiry. That's the ADA committee hearing into SABC affairs. Continues this morning. We've been running a poll, Kendall, asking people to, well, whether they're following this big story. It's been the biggest story in the country for the last week or so. What's the poll saying?
Well, the question really is, once again, are you following the SABC board inquiry? 86% say yes, an emphatic yes, 14% no, but they are watching us, so they are following us.
Yeah, they have to be following. 155 votes. Keep it coming. Let's take a look at some of the comments that you guys are talking about with regards to the inquiry that's ongoing right now. Sipo Mahoro is the first one. Yes, I'm following it and I'm happy because that ADA committee members are united and they want to rebuild the image of SABC.
Right, and then Christian Glenhans, it brings tears to our eyes to see there are still good people that fight evil. We stand with you. Some very interesting choice of words there.
Yeah, Rash talks about SABC 8 paints a picture of gloom. SABC providing excellent service without the disgruntled journalist, says Rashid Ali.
I've been waiting for that
There's
kind of tweet.
There are different views in the world, Kendall. You have to respect it, I suppose.
Africa Makungu, very interested at the same time, horrific at SABC Newsroom. Wow.
And this one from Ramokhele says, not interested, not interested. Well, Rams, I'm sorry, my friend, but you are probably living in the wrong country at the moment because that's what everyone's talking about. Now, Kendall is very interested in our question of the day. You pushed it, AB, step down. We had a chat about AB. It's, I think, a significant development for South Africa, and it shows kind of where AB's head is at, and it seems to be in a positive place.
I couldn't agree with you more. Actually recognizing the leadership that Faf du Plessis has been able to bring to the team, the fact that the team has actually bonded together behind Faf, and they've got, we've mentioned this before, the kind of swagger that the Proteas have got going into tests is just amazing right now.
Let's take a look at your comments on AB. I know AB has lots of supporters in South Africa and the world. Greg says, I've always been an AB fan. I enjoyed the thrashing the Aussies got though. Yeah, that kind of sets it up.
Jack Donald chimes in, says, good timing. That's how it's done. You do it when you still have dignity.
Yeah, I like that, Jack Donald. Unati says, I think he made the right decision to step down because he can't do it all. Yes, Unati. And now he can maybe take the gloves occasionally. Not all the time, but every now and again when the team needs him.
And he might even be able to go up top of the order as you think he should be, eh?
Yeah, either him or Quinny. You know, it's time to play the brave cricket I think we're talking about. I think De Villiers, he take a good decision to step down because another player, they need to put that captain armband.
And Ikona Nazo, good decision, AB. You are the best in the world. We still want to see you performing well without any pressure of being the captain at the same time.
I think we might just see a different AB de Villiers come out now, and we might see that AB that we all enjoy, the one who dominates the world, who plays with that kind of freedom.
100%. And I think the one thing that we can look forward to is that we're going to have a very interesting conundrum when he's back fit again. Does he go top of the order? Who drops out? Is it JP Dumini? Who? It's going to be a very interesting fight for places in the starting 11 for the Proteas going forward, I'll tell you that.
We're waiting for the SABC board inquiry to get underway in Parliament in Cape Town shortly. We're going to take the news headlines and some news until they get underway there. So, Kendall, off you go, man.
Oh, thank you very much. Into a little corner there.
Yeah. The parliamentary inquiry into the SABC board's fitness to hold office has resumed, with former SABC board member Professor Bongani Khumalo taking the stand today. The summer initiate death toll in the Eastern Cape has reportedly risen to 16 now. Several West African leaders, African Union and the United Nations are expected to meet with the Gambian President Yahya Jammeh in an effort to persuade him to relinquish power. Those are your top news stories right now. Let's go over to Kendall Mahamati to give us that sports update.
Thank you very much, Evan. A very interesting morning that we wake up to. Lots going on around the world, but also lots going around in the world of sports as well. Good morning to you. This is what we're bringing you in the sports today. A.B. de Villiers steps down as Proteas Test captain, and childhood friend and captain Faf du Plessis takes over as the permanent leader of the Proteas Test side. And Portugal and Real Madrid forward Cristiano Ronaldo wins the Ballon d'Or for a fourth time after winning the Champions League and European Championships in 2016.
Is FC Bayern München.
And for the third time in 4 seasons, Arsenal will face German champions Bayern Munich in the Champions League last 16.
For Bayern München.
All this and more we've got for you later on. Should we be able to go to the sports bulletin? For now, though, I do know Evan has got the news for you.
Yeah, Kendall, very good morning. If you've just joined us, of course, our top story right now. The SABC says it's still studying a judgment which found the appointment of Hladi Motsoeneng as Group Executive for Corporate Affairs to be illegal. The DA voiced its satisfaction after the Western Cape High Court ruled that says Motsoeneng should be removed from his office and he should not pitch up at Auckland Park. The ruling comes as the ADA committee continues with the parliamentary inquiry into the SABC's affairs and the board's fitness to hold office.
The court ruled that Motsoeneng's recent appointment to the position of Group Executive for Corporate Affairs was unlawful. It also set aside an earlier disciplinary process which exonerated Motsoeneng following the Public Protector's report in 2014.
It is declared that unless and until the negative findings against Motsoeneng in the Public Protector's report are reviewed and set aside, or unless and until Motsoeneng is exonerated from the said negative findings by way of a valid disciplinary hearing, Motsoeneng may not hold any position at all in the second respondent, the SABC.
The court says a fresh disciplinary process against Motsoeneng, should there be one, must be initiated within 2 weeks of a new board's constitution. DA leader Musi Maimani says justice has been served.
We are of the complete view today it's a victory for justice. Mr. Motsoeneng cannot work at the SABC, and ultimately I'm also glad that he personally must pay back the cost for this case so he stops litigating on the basis of the taxpayers' money.
The SABC says it's studying the judgment.
At the present moment, our lawyers have just received the judgment and they are now studying the judgment, and only after they have studied the judgment they will be in a position to advise us on the way forward. At this present moment we can't say anything further until we're given that judgment.
The court also found that the SABC and the board conducted themselves unlawfully for failing to implement the recommendations of the Public Protector's report. It says the SABC violated the Constitution by not assisting and protecting the Public Protector. The Public Protector found in 2014 that Motsoeneng was dishonest and had lied about his matric certificate. The Public Protector recommended that the SABC board take corrective action against him for this and for raising his salary illegally from 1.5 million to 2.4 million rand. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
Now, I can report from Parliament we've got news coming in that says that the sound system in the venue has now packed up and they have to change venues. They're changing venues right now. As soon as they back up at Parliament, we'll be live there for more testimony. Of course, a little bit earlier this morning, the former SABC board member, Professor Bongani Kumalo, says he observed compliance challenges between the board and SABC executives. Kumalo is the first witness today to appear before Parliament's ADA committee probing the SABC board's fitness to hold office. Kumalo said in his wealth of experience in other entities, it made him uneasy with the situation at the public broadcaster. Yesterday, SABC economics editor Thandeka Kubulu told the inquiry that journalists were frustrated about a decision not to cover violent protests in the run-up to the August local elections. Kubulu is one of the 4 SABC journalists testifying on behalf of the so-called SABC 8.
For us to fulfill our public service mandate, we need a free press. This freedom, borrowing from the Bill of Rights, provides for independent scrutiny of the forces that shape society and is essential to realizing the promise of a democracy. It enables citizens to make informed judgments on the issues of the day. And for example, on the day that I so pleaded with the head of news to allow our journalists who were actually shouting at me in the newsroom to do their jobs as the capital city was burning, People needed to know whether to send their kids to school that day. They needed to know which routes to take into the city. They needed to know where they could fetch water in the context. So we were not allowed to cover this as we should as journalists and provide the public service.
SAFM Current Affairs executive producer Krivani Pillay said the cost of not defending an independent public broadcaster would be insurmountable, and not speaking out would mean that 20 million South Africans would be deprived of information.
We chose to stand up because we felt that our newsroom had become a source of derision, despair, and criticism from the people we are fundamentally accountable to, and that is the South African public. If we didn't stand up, the costs of not defending an independent public broadcaster would be insurmountable. If we didn't stand up, we wouldn't be able to practice journalism with integrity. And if we didn't stand up, those in positions of power would grab more and more of our sacred editorial space until there was nothing left. If I didn't stand up, I would be complicit in depriving more than 20 million South Africans who solely rely on the SABC as their primary source of news and information, of balanced, factual information compiled by journalists dedicated to objectivity. For all these reasons, this is why we stood up.
Another SABC reporter, Lucanio Calata, gave details of instructions that he says disregarded journalistic principles.
I've received phone calls from basically everybody in Johannesburg. Notando Maseko, Nyana, Simon, all of them have at various stages said, no, we can't go with that. You must use this soundbite. A couple of years ago, Mr. Motsoeneng had come and he had appeared before the Portfolio Committee. And he had responded to the committee on the issue of the New Age newspaper. The committee had asked him about the deal. And I had felt that Mr. Motsoeneng hadn't really responded, hadn't really addressed the issue that was being asked by the committee members. So I didn't use him in my package because he hadn't said anything of substance. Former regional editor Jeffrey Twala, he called me out of the band practice that I must come back to Parliament, to the office, and I must rework my package and include Mr. Motsoeneng. I tried to argue and I said, sir, but Mr. Motsoeneng did not say anything of substance to the committee. He said, no, I must use him. Eventually, I settled on a soundbite where he said, the New Age, this is me quoting him, he said, the New Age, as you know, they are new, like the New Age. Because he hadn't said anything that I could use, but because that was the most coherent soundbite or anything that I could use of him, I then had to use him in my package. One of my colleagues about two Decembers ago was people that claimed to have been from SABC's forensic department walked into the office while the office was full with journalists, came and grabbed her laptop, unplugged the laptop, and confiscated it. Eventually, at the end, they told her that she had been suspected of leaking information to a Democratic Alliance MP. Now, what the forensic guys had found was that this particular MP had sent an email to her. Right? So because an MP had sent an email to a SABC journalist, the forensic guys came, confiscated her laptop, and interrogated her for 2 hours.
Another one of the SABC8, Vuyo Mboko, testified that the SABC has allowed resources to be used towards building rival Channel ANN7 and that resources for shows such as Morning Live pay for TNA Breakfast, while money that the TNA Breakfast makes does not go to the SABC. Mboko also added that the ratings of SABC News have declined.
They have allowed SABC money to be used to build a rival channel, ANN7. Morning Live resources get diverted to pay for the production costs of those TNA breakfasts that you see. Yet the money that the owners of TNA make, none of it, not a cent, goes to the SABC. From the millions they make through sponsorship to the tables that they sell at those breakfasts, they do not spend, they do not take any of that to the SABC, except perhaps to the people who make things happen for them. SABC News spends 2, 3, sometimes $500,000 for one of those TNA breakfasts, I'm told, to put it on air, because we pay for the production costs. We pay for the presenters to be there, for the presenters, for all those people, that whole tribe that has to travel to Bloemfontein or to the Northern Cape to do those broadcasts. The owners of TNA don't pay any of that money. And they've been open. When they couldn't succeed in taking over the news of the SABC, they put up a rival channel to take on the SABC, but it's the SABC that has to pay for its downfall and to build this alternative channel. Now, the SABC does periodic appraisals of the performances of its news bulletins and its current affairs programs. Those ARs, if you were to ask the SABC to furnish you with that information, will show you how we are bleeding, how we are ceding ground to competition.
Yeah, before we go to Parliament, let's just take a look at our poll that we're putting up. And some of your comments, of course, we've been asking you on our poll. Are you interested or are you following the SABC board inquiry? Now, 169 of you have voted this morning and telling us, yes, we're very interested in this. It's the most riveting viewing in South Africa in December thus far. Let's take a look at some of your tweets. What are you guys telling us on this question? Lucky Magwaza, he says, there's always two sides of any story. Thank you, TNA Biz Brief, for allowing government to have a voice. Don't back down, says Lucky Magwaza. He goes on to say, he says, New Age, viva to the champions of change in South Africa, viva. Talking about the TNA Business Brief. Nati Tete says, Vuyo Mboko delivered the most damaging punches as a witness. Victor Zwane says, yes, and all thanks to the SABC News Online channel for the broadcasting. Clear picture. I'm 200% behind the SABC8 and the SABC inquiry, says Victor Zwane. Savannah says, best thing on TV. I'm always watching it. Watching TV like a hawk. I'm sure you are. Well, matters are back. They found a new room. Let's go to Parliament to continue the inquiry into the SABC.
It is fair to say, it is important to state that the chief executive of the SABC, Ms. Mkhobo, at the time was not well supported at all. In fact, she went around as a persona non grata in the organization that she led as the head executive. People look up to her to get direction, but if she is browbeaten and her back is not straight because she does not enjoy the support from where she should get it, things don't go well at all. Unfortunately, that reality dawned to us very early on, that there was a very poor relationship between the chairman and the chief executive of the SABC. And Ms. Mkhobo frightened me all the time, because all the time you looked at her, even though she's a very strong professional woman, she looked like she could drop dead anytime, because she was a bundle of nerves. She was not happy at all.
Prof, in your own experience, because you would have interacted with the executive directors within the board, because they are part and parcel of the board. What was the relationship between the group CEO, Ms. Mkhobo, and the group COO, Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng at the time?
Look at it this way. Ms. Mkhobo, it became very clear to us that she had had her power, her prerogative, and her scope usurped by the acting COO. And there was a relationship that all the time showed contempt towards the chief executive. And we were faced with a very strange situation where the chief executive was undermined, and she did not matter, even at times when major issues were being discussed, even at times when we're looking at strategy. She was not the one talking about strategy. It was another arrangement altogether. But the question you've asked is the relationship between the CEO and the COO. It was lopsided. It was a lopsided relationship where clearly the power was with the COO.
It was the responsibility of the board, given the circumstances you've just outlined, to restore order. And you were part and parcel of that board. What is it that the board did to salvage that situation?
The board works in a particular manner. The board does not approach the executive from any and every direction. The board works through its leader, the chairperson of the organization, the chairperson of the board. And of course, some of us approached the chairperson of the board and talked with her about the condition which we saw, and we made our effort to try and first achieve an improved relationship between the two ladies, so that that improved relationship could take us into an improved relationship between the chief executive and her staff. But I think a lot of things had happened already. You know, quite frankly, it had reached a point where Ms. Mkhobo no longer believed she wanted to remain in the organization. She felt she had been so let down that she did not want to stay any longer in the organization.
Let's go back to the Public Protector's report. That's one of the documents that the board, your board, had to implement its remedial actions. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The report did not necessarily deal with the issues that emanated within the duration of your board, is correct?
Yes, sir.
But there was a legal obligation on the board that you were part of to implement those remedial actions, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The evidence before the committee points a picture where the chairpersons of subcommittees had to look at the report, delineate issues that affected their portfolios, and report back to the board. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were within the HR committee, amongst others. Is that correct?
I was the chairman of the HR and RAMCO.
How did the HR committee deal with the Public Protector's report?
Sir, I convened a meeting through the company secretary of the Human Resources and Remuneration Committee to look at the specific issues which had been raised by the Public Protector regarding, in particular, the then acting COO. And we had very vigorous discussions around the issue, and the intention of the HR committee, the majority of us, was to implement the remedial recommendations or the remedial directives of the Public Protector. One very clearly was that a disciplinary investigation had to take place around the appointment of the then COO. We debated that for a long time, but I have to say that the meetings that this matter was, at which this matter was discussed, ended up in serious acrimony because we could not all agree, even though the majority of us agreed that we had to take that action. We had to implement the recommendations from the report.
Now, we know that as late as yesterday, the Western Cape High Court has redirected the disciplinary proceedings of Mr. Mtsone.
Yes, sir.
Why and how did we get there? Why did it have to take a court for the second time to have the board implement the Public Protector's remedial actions?
Sir, I have to once again remind this honorable committee that I resigned and left the board of the SABC in early January 2015. I have been out of that board for about 2 years now. But what happened during my time was that when we tried to reach a point where we would address this issue, we could not reach this point because not all of us agreed that such action needed to be taken, even when this matter was discussed at the board. Unfortunately, sir, I did not have the benefit of access to minutes and documents which I would have liked to bring here to show the record of our discussions, the debate around that issue. There wasn't an open way for us to go to this. I remember that Mr. Vusi Mavuso, Mr. Lubisi, Mr. Ronnie Lubisi, who were also on that committee, were in agreement, but not all of us. The chairperson of the board was also on the committee. We did not have an agreement to take this matter to where it should go. When we took the matter for discussion at the board, again, it split the board. It was one of the most vexing matters for us to deal with. But to tell you, sir, where I stand as chairman of HR and RAMCO, we wanted this matter to be dealt with as it had been recommended by the Public Protector.
Let's move to a meeting where a special meeting where you were called to discuss and recommend the appointment of the COO. Can you tell the committee the circumstances surrounding the convening of that meeting. How did you get to know about the meeting?
It was a meeting, sir, that was rather impromptu. We were called for a special meeting, and it took place in the evening. It was preceded by a meeting in Magaliesburg, where we were looking at the human resources management strategies, where we met with the new minister then, the Honorable Faith Mthambi, for the first time. We then were convened by the chairperson of the board. When we got to the meeting, we were read a letter, which it came from either the representatives of Mr. Mtweneng or Mr. Mtweneng himself, the then acting COO. It was motivating, making a case or raising a question: why has he not been appointed on a full-time basis as a COO of the organization?
Before we get to the agenda of the meeting, I just want to understand, this was not one of your standard board meetings.
It was not, sir.
Yes, it is a special meeting.
It was a special board meeting. There were many special board meetings, by the way, very, very hastily arranged for a number of reasons.
Did anyone explain the urgency of this meeting?
The person who addressed us, sir, was the chairman of the board, Ms. Shabalala, Ms. Ellen Shabalala. She read the letter, and it was necessary that we look at this issue of the appointment of Mr. Mtweneng. And I think some reference was made to the fact that there was a concern on the part of the minister, which was also expressed during our Magaliesburg meeting, that he had been acting for a long time. And that seemed to be the urgency that we were faced with.
But why did it not wait for the next scheduled board meeting?
That is what baffled us. That is what caused us to ask questions. That is what caused us to say, what can we look at now? Because when you are to consider, when you are to deal with a matter such as that, because the proposal at the time was that we should do the appointment. Of course, when you have to do a thing like this, a number of documents, a number of things had to be before you. A serious motivation now, not a complaint that this appointment had not been made. That does, what you need is documentation which state the case why does the person qualify, why should such an appointment be made, and above all, why should it be made now?
Did the remedial actions contained in the Public Protector's report, particularly in view of the lack of appetite displayed by the board in dealing with the specific issues that pertained to Mr. Mtweneng, did that report play any role in the decision to employ him?
Yes, sir, it did indeed. And I have to correct any perception, sir, that the board as such did not have appetite to deal with the matters. At that time, the board was dichotomized. There were people who did not seem to have such an appetite, who were pushing back against looking at those directives or remedial actions. And there were people who were looking at the imperatives of good corporate governance. So it cannot be true that the board did not want to deal with the matter. The board was split over the matter. And that was the case that night again, because the issue of those remedial actions came up other than the fact that there was a view that due process had not been followed. some of the members of the board raised the issue of the unfinished business from the report of the public protector.
I understand in any meeting situation of a board, there will be discussions, there will be arguments for or against a particular matter that is subject of a discussion. You'll try to find each other, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But ultimately, the board takes a decision.
Yes, sir.
Either by consensus or by a vote. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
And whether you were against the issues that were discussed in that decision, once a board takes that decision, it becomes the board decision. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes.
Yes. So I do concede to what you're saying, that at the board there were divergent views
Yes.
on how to handle
Yes.
the remedial actions. But the net effect we need to concede is that the board did not accede to the view that says let's deal with let's implement the public protector's remedial actions. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And therefore that was the decision of the board, not to deal with the remedial actions of the public protectors, correct?
Strictly speaking, sir, that was the decision of the board. Yes. It doesn't matter any longer. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about who voted for or who voted against, but the majority of the board members, in fact, that evening, took a particular decision, and that became the decision of the board, and that's how it works.
In this exercise, because we're piercing the corporate veil, how did you vote when it came to the voting on whether or not to employ Mr. Motswaneng as the permanent COO?
I voted against it, but also to give background to that, I had a duty to disallow that matter to be discussed at all. The main thrust of my argument or my participation that evening was that this matter should not serve on the board at all that evening, because as chairman of HR and RAMCO, I should have been bringing a recommendation from HR and RAMCO following due process. Due process had not been followed leading to that meeting that evening. Therefore, that meeting was out of order. In fact, it was not correct to discuss that matter, the manner it was brought onto the table. And a good part of the evening, in fact, was on that particular issue, when I said, please, no discussion of this matter must get off the table. If there must be an appointment of a permanent COO, due process must be followed. And a number of issues, if the gentleman concerned aspired for the position, he had to look at his circumstances, he had to apply, he had to qualify or not qualify, but that had not taken place. And I voted against it. I know that this matter, was well publicized thereafter.
The cabinet policy around migration from analog to digital had related to the set of boxes.
Yes, sir.
Who was the minister at the time, and what were his views around, or these directions, policy directions? I'm asking this question in line with the contract that was later signed with MultiChoice.
Mr. Chairman, at that time, if the memory serves me well, the agreement had already been signed with MultiChoice. But there was a serious debate around digital migration and policy. And what our view was as a board, we had to submit our view regarding whether there had to be encryption or not. At that time, the minister was the Honorable Yunus Karim, who visited the board at least twice to come and explain what the policy, where the policy status, what the policy status was. And those meetings, in fact, made us realize, those of us who were new, that there were many, many things that were happening, that the conveyor belt of issues was overloaded. One of the heftiest issues was the issue of the set-top boxes. And there was strife in those meetings, very, very serious contentions during the meetings. In fact, very, very embarrassing altercations between certain board members and the minister, to a point where there were accusations and counter-accusations. You will recall, sir, that Ms. Mkhobo at a certain stage stated that she was accused of having her children working at ETV. There were other board members who were accused of the same. And again, multi-choice was being discussed. Its name was being thrown around as well in the accusations and counter-accusations. At a certain point, in fact, he did this twice, if not thrice. The minister felt that we were suspicious of him. We were treating him with suspicion as a shareholder representative, and that we did not seem to want to understand that he had no interest in that issue whatsoever, and that he wanted movement forward. Thrice, he offered to take a lie detector test so that we could prove that there was nothing corrupt about what he was doing, that he was just doing his job, and that he was wanting for movement forward in that case. In each of those instances, at least twice, I think, I prevailed on the minister and told him that, Minister, please don't embarrass us. We are not suspicious of you. We do not want you to take a lie detector. So please refrain from offering us that. And the minister said, look, I want for this matter to move forward. And there are insinuations and innuendos that seem to come from certain board members, and those of us who were new did not have the institutional memory to relate to some of those issues. It was hugely embarrassing for us. Unfortunately, the minister left before that issue was resolved. But it is important that this was one of the issues, in fact, that have been very, very difficult during the time of that board.
Just one thing that I almost forgot relating to the employment of the COO. There's evidence before this committee, and I think you also briefly touched on a meeting in Magaliesberg.
Yes.
Where the minister told the board in that bilateral that you had to appoint Mr. Mtsweni. In light of that statement and the subsequent employment of Mr. Mtsweni as the permanent COO against all odds, would you attribute the statement by the minister as an undue pressure on the board?
Such a call obviously raises eyebrows if it's isolated like it was. If the minister was saying that there are so many acting positions in the organization, one of the things that I expect is that these issues must be addressed and we must have permanent staff. That would have been fine. And in fact, I must say for the minister that she did point that out. But what stood up at that meeting was the focus on Mr. Mtsweneng. But then I go back to the board. Why some of the board members stood firm on that evening? When a shareholder representative of any company raises an issue, the board must always remember that while it is answerable to a shareholder or a shareholder representative, underline answerable or accountable to, its ultimate responsibility rests with this legal entity, this legal person called the company. In this particular case, the SABC. There are certain things that we have to do in terms of the law as well as policies of the organization. It behoved, is it correct English? The members of the board to then say, policy is this. This is how we appoint people. If a position comes up, it must be advertised, shortlisting must happen, interviews must occur, eventually the responsible committee brings it to the board, and then the board recommends to the minister. That process was not followed. So I would like to say, whatever the role of the minister, it was incumbent on the board to make sure that they play their role. Boards are accountable to and are answerable to shareholders and shareholders' representatives, but their ultimate responsibility, the best interest to which they work is the organization, and the organization has policies.
You resigned.
Yes, sir.
Immediately before that, you had received a letter from the Minister of Communications, Ms. Mutambi, asking for reasons why you shouldn't be suspended. Can you share the circumstances surrounding that with the committee?
The letter that I received did not talk about suspension. The letter that I received said I had to state reasons why it should not be recommended, she should not recommend to the president that I be removed from the board. It was the strangest thing ever to occur to me. In all my corporate life, I had never been faced with a situation such as that. What even made it more strange is that at the Magaliesberg meeting, at the time that we met with the minister for the first time, at the session that I led as chairman of HR and REMCO, because it was a straight session of HR, the minister and I had a discussion, and she affirmed my background. She affirmed my experience. She affirmed my knowledge and commitment. And she asked me, please, Prof, I would like you to please help play a role. We must make it work with SABC this time around. And I pledged that. And other members, I'm sure, pledged that if they were so asked by the minister. After that, not long from that time, the minister, in fact, shortly before that letter was received, the minister gave me a call. I was in Pretoria for business unrelated to SABC. And she called me to her office quickly. And I went to her office. And she said, I would like to just discuss issues at the SABC. And let's just talk about what is happening there and what are the problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the course of our discussion, as I was saying, that it is really getting very serious. She wants to know, she wants to remedy challenges where there are challenges. I said, Minister, give me your word. I'll talk with you as openly as I can if you seek to resolve issues. And let's discuss issues at the SABC. We discussed with the minister. We're open with each other. It was a very good meeting. And she made me feel and know about what she felt and what she thought about different things and about different people. I mean, about everybody, including some of the names we've mentioned here. But of course, it was a confidential meeting. And she said to me, Prof, before we reached that, she said, I said to her, Minister, I want you to know that I would like to resign from the board of the SABC. I've been wanting to resign from the board of the SABC. She was shocked. She said, why? I said, no, things are not going well. We are making an effort, and we discussed all those issues and so on. But she prevailed on me. She said, please don't go. Stay. If you leave, you are one of those people that if you leave, things will fall apart. Prof, I am counting on you to help me turn around and stabilize the SABC. We discussed at length. I took her very, very seriously. She gave me her cell number. She said, here's my number. Let's keep contact. Let's talk with each other. And I even assured her during that meeting, because there were words such as, some of the people are wanting to be chairman, etc., etc. I said, Minister, I'm okay with being a board member, I'm not looking for anything. Once upon a time, a colleague of mine taught me a very interesting word, sapiential authority. He said, you don't have to hold a higher position than the one you hold to be influential. Use your sapiential authority. I valued that. I thought, leadership can take place anywhere you are, given your experience and whatever you bring in. We discussed that with the minister. We left that meeting, again with a request, please, Prof, don't go, promise me. And I said something that I had said also at Mahalisberg. I said, Minister, I'm going to say something that may sound odd. I'm very respectful. I respect authority. You are the shareholder representative, and I sit on your board. But you are young enough to be my daughter, and I'm old enough to be your father. I will do everything to make sure that your term becomes a success, as long as we are truthful with each other and we work with honor. I will make sure that I play my part. I've served on a number of boards. I want to focus on my businesses now, but I will see my term through, my term as a board member through. We left the meeting, it was great, and so on. We went on, we kept the confidentiality and so on. Not long thereafter, then we received these letters. When I received my letter, it was one of those best of times during December in northern KZN. I'm a vegetarian, but at that time, if you know KZN, they have slaughtered a sheep on the 24th of December. It's going to be Christmas tomorrow. Everybody is happy, family is together. I receive an email. Here is a letter from the Minister of Communications with the content that we discussed earlier. I was shocked cold. I sat for a while. I withdrew from the company of the family. I read the letter again. I was shocked. I kept it away from the family. I didn't discuss it with family. The following day, on Christmas Day, I tried to raise the minister. I called her. And on the number that she had given me, she did not answer. I tried, she did not answer. I thought, well, she's busy probably with family things. I tried her also on Family Day, 26th of December. She did not answer. I called Mr. Dan Mancha, the advisor of the minister, and of this. And he said, no, I don't believe that, Prof. No, I don't believe that. That letter was not meant for you. you know. You know, such a letter, no, it was not meant for you. See, the minister wants to fix things. There are people that she is wanting to get sorted out in that board. But, you know, it's not, we are not one of them. I said, no. The letter comes to me, it's addressed to me, and I have never found myself in a situation such as that before. Then I came back, and I was communicating with the fellow. He kept giving me assurance. I gave him a message to send to the minister, to tell the minister that I'm very concerned I've received this letter, and she has not picked up my call. And I never got an answer. When January started, in the first week, I called him again. We discussed this. He assured me, I've spoken to the minister. No, it's not meant for you. Don't resign. She was shocked to hear that you are thinking of resigning as a result. I said, look, I'm going to resign. You know, if she does not come back to me, I'm going to resign. If the letter is not meant for me, it must be withdrawn. You know, at least she must afford me the courtesy of a reply, of a response to my call. That did not happen. You know, I then resigned from the board. I stated in my letter that when a shareholder displays diminished commitment or confidence in a director, then it is incumbent on that director to review his circumstances. I sent the letter in. I got media inquiries. I had not spoken to one journalist. It's not my style. And when the media inquired, I did not want to talk to the media. But I heard that the minister has denied that she got my resignation over a few days until it was confirmed that I had resigned. And the media wanted to talk to me. I said, now I've resigned from that board. I will not discuss matters of that board. So that is how it happened. You know, I resigned of my volition, but it was precipitated by this strangest of behaviors. Up to today, I've not received a call or a response to my letter.
No further questions, Chair.
I thank you very much, Advocate. Honourable Killian, your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Prof, could you perhaps tell us, how soon afterwards did you get confirmation from the appointing authority, the President's office, that your resignation is accepted?
Honourable Member, I don't recall receiving such confirmation. I actually may have myself misdirected my resignation letter because I sent it to the minister. I may have needed to send it to the appointing authority. I actually sent it to the minister.
Thank you. Secondly, I would like to ask you, Prof, you paint a picture, and particularly on page 7, you paint a picture of a person with immense personal power, stating that he is the SABC. You're also saying that he's disdainful of organizational protocol to the point of being callous. You're saying he could not be questioned and he could not be called to order, etc., etc. So he reigned freely. He made announcements on behalf of the board that the board was not aware of. Where do you think he derived that power from? Was there a change in his behavior when the new Minister of Communication was appointed after the elections? Was he behaving differently before that time? Because you came in at the end of 2013?
Yes.
If I'm corrected.
Yes. At the best of times, using management speak or behavioral speak, you would call this gentleman a type A personality. And you may actually call him a type A personality gone wrong. You know, here you are talking about a very energetic person and a person who is not a fool, who is smart, a go-getter, a mover and shaker. The only problem that you have is that this individual is no respecter of corporate governance. In fact, he has no tolerance of governance. He wants to work in a manner that I tried to describe earlier. He wants to have unfettered power and prerogative. I he derives his power, his assurance, his confidence from himself. You know, first, he believes that he can manipulate, if you like, anybody to be agreeable with him. And he finds certain people agreeable, supportive of him. This is not a person who does not take notice when you put your foot down. You know, I've seen the person we're talking about respond when you put your foot down. And he thinks twice. And he requests a meeting. He wants to talk with you. He wants to negotiate a new interactive contract with you because he's shocked by this thing that is not being used to being called to order. You know, with good leadership, with a firm hand, I don't think that, you know, he would not listen. But in the circumstances where he is being allowed leeway, he's being supported, he behaves in this manner. I'm sorry, Honourable Killian, if I'm not...
I would just like to know, the mere fact that the minister came in and in fact put pressure on the board to appoint this person because he was acting for so long. If we look at the other executives who have been acting for 12 and 16 and 18 and 24 months, why was he so exceptional and why was there such pressure on the board?
I will not speculate on the minister's reasons, but they are interesting. An individual such as this will believe that he is supported. And as it's been said a number of times, you know, you're talking here about a person who appears very manipulative. It doesn't take long for the unsuspecting to fall under his spell. You know, I don't know what happened to the minister. You know, I don't know what happened to all the other board members who supported him. But clearly, you know, in his attempt to be ungovernable, there were board members who insisted that he shall be subject to effective corporate governance like every other manager or employee within the organization.
If I could just follow up on that one.
No. We went through this route yesterday. Honourable Chauke.
Thank you very much, Chair. Prof, can you maybe explain to us, Prof, how he managed to divide this board? A board that has professors, doctors, lawyers, I mean, of your caliber, by the way. How did this person manage to divide you? And if possible, can you, because it seems now we're now dealing with groups that support and groups that did not support. Can you in fact share with us, because all of you were elected in the public process, can you tell us who are those who were supportive and who are those who were not supportive? That has happened before in the committee, just to confirm that part.
There is a point I make in page 4, and I say that if you don't mind, I will just read two paragraphs. Well, let me read one of the paragraphs. The other one I've alluded to about unfettered powers. One of the major challenges that board was faced with was inexperience. Not everybody was experienced. Inadequate training on the part of board members. You know, we had an induction, but not everyone had been brought to speed as a board members. Indiscipline, familiarity, misdirected or bad corporate politics, internal power contests, poor and diminished business ethics, and possibly criminal motives. I once read a book by F.G. Bailey in sociology. It was titled Stratagems and Spoils, a very, very interesting book about behavior in organizations. Those are amongst the things that cause the board to be weak. Vusi Mavuso, Ronnie Lubisi, Krish Naidu, the late Hope Zinde, Rachel Kalidas. I will not talk about Ms. Nolutando Kosa, who left early, who I would have listed with these. Tembinkosi Bonagele, I would also not talk about him, he had left early. And of course, these are the people that I believed stood firmly for sound and proper corporate governance. You know, and I want to say, it's been mentioned in the course of the week, where I stood in relation to this. I will not talk about the rest. You know, it's not a matter of whether you are learned or not, or whether you're smart or not. There's a number of issues that maybe you will not be able to put your finger on in this process. This process may help you reach certain conclusions, you know, but maybe you will have new hypotheses that you may pass to another process which may follow and will be able to uncover some of the reasons why people were behaving the way people were behaving. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Prof. Your engagement with the minister, which you term to be a confidential meeting, now that things have come to this level, and I'll take it that part of your engagement with the minister, you are dealing with weaknesses that we'll have identified. Are you able now to take part of that confidential discussion and share with us of the issues that you have identified as most critical areas that require intervention? But at the same time, this surprise that at the end you become a target, that you receive this letter on the 24th. What is your reading of that? What is your understanding and the reading of now that you have shared this confidential engagement with the minister, you have looked at challenges, and you pledge yourself to say, I'm prepared to go and assist, and then in return you then get, what's your reading of that?
Well, sir, it's been well established that there has been a kind of malevolent power in the organization. You know, that's the power. You know, and I was surprised that that letter was not withdrawn. And that's why I went on to resign, even against the advice of the people that I mentioned. They tried to talk to me not to resign. I said, guys, you're much younger. You know, I've been in the corporate world a long time. Reputation is one of your strongest assets. You've got to try as much as possible to protect it. I was prepared. I went into this board, you know, with great confidence and commitment, but I was hugely disappointed that I was not going to be able to be part of the team that will turn SABC around. And what we discussed with the minister, if I just give you a glimpse, ended up with us seeing things roughly the same way. You will be surprised even about personalities, you know, but she needed help to be able to deal with the personalities, if you get my drift.
Thank you, Prof. Honorable, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chair. Prof. Kumalo, you mentioned that Mr. Motsoeneng was very, and I'm quoting, was very influential and had personal power he flaunted with impunity. Now, how did he flaunt his personal power? Did he just say, I'm very powerful, you can't touch me? Or how did he express his personal power? Did he say, you know, as previous people have said, I will go to Pretoria if you do not give me what I want? How did he flaunt his personal power?
He would get into a board meeting, for instance. I'll just make you one example, where we would be in a board meeting and a board member participates in a way that he doesn't like. Then it feels like so-and-so has an agenda. You see, if we have an agenda here, you know, we can see through this agenda, etc., etc., etc. And the board member will talk very strongly and remind him his place and so on. And he'll say, look, I must tell you, I'm not afraid of you. You know, I can stand on my own. You know, I'm not afraid, you know, and things like that, which is bizarre in corporate environments. We don't see this in board meetings often, you know, or in, you know. So these are things, you know, where we had to intervene and say, hey, you know, that's not how things are done here. You don't discuss things like that here. I remember once I had to intervene from the side when he was combating one board member. You see, that impunity, that's the kind of impunity that you saw. And this is why I say that, you know, look very carefully at the kind of psychology that you find in organizations. This is a very interesting phenomenon.
Did he ever flaunt political power, not his own personal power? Or political backers?
No, he didn't.
In your statement, you also mention a lack of discipline amongst members of the board. Please explain what you mean by that, and which members of the board were ill-disciplined, and how do they express that ill-discipline?
Yeah, I'm not going to mention names, ma'am, if you allow me, but I'm going to say to you kindly that members of the board must be careful that their point of entry is through the chief executive. And they should not allow themselves to be accessed by different executives or staff in such a manner that they become manipulated in the process. And I want to say this also, ma'am, about shareholder representatives, and mark my statement because I have wanted to raise this point. Because one of the greatest weaknesses in many organizations, especially public enterprises, is the incomplete line of, is the incomplete protocol. You know, as much as we focus on boards and directors and executives, we also should not take for granted that once a person has been deployed as a shareholder representative or into a position where they become a shareholder representative, that suddenly they know about organizations, they know about companies, they know about governance, and so on and so on. We all need training. We all need orientation. You know, there must be training not only of boards and directors, but also of shareholder representatives, so that they are aware of the dynamics that they are going to be dealing with, and behaviors such as this behavior we see it now, you know, in terms of how it can come at you and even impugn your standing.
I'm afraid, Prof, I'm going to insist.
Yeah.
Members of the SABC board are appointed in an open and public process. They are appointed by Parliament. They remain accountable to Parliament. If there are board members appointed to a public organization who display ill discipline, the authority that oversees their appointment should be let known of this. So I'm going to insist. Which board members displayed ill discipline?
Ma'am, I will answer your question, but I want to also want to make a point that I omitted to make in the beginning. You know, the headline issue here is whether the SABC board is fit to hold office. And my statement, my opening statement, is that we're dealing here with a question that has already been answered. That, in fact, you have one non-executive board member, that's Professor Makube. You know, with great respect, you know, I wanted to ask, you know, what do you want to know? You know, because the board, for all intents and purposes, has ceased to exist. But I'm saying to you, ma'am, that the members of the board that I mentioned stood by sound and proper corporate governance, and that I wish the chairperson of the board had played her role effectively as a unifier. I hope this answers your question.
Can we, I can see that you're not very...
Please probe me.
No. I can see that you're not 100% happy with the question. Can we reserve it? We'll find a way of discussing it as members in terms of one or two of these questions, because you're not the first one, Prof, that felt uncomfortable. But we'll have to find a way, all of us, of dealing with it. But let me remind the meeting once again, and I think it's an appropriate time to do that. You're correct, Prof. Our mandate is whether the board is fit and proper. That's our mandate, whether the board is fit and proper. Now, it's inescapable that we'll talk about actors in the past and what do they do in terms of where we are now. But we shouldn't lose, at the end of the day, honorable members, we must answer the question whether the professor should be where he is, whether the CEO, the COO, and the CFO should be where they are, because that's the board as it stands now. That's really the question. And I've allowed us to talk about other individuals because they are intricately linked to it. But really, we should focus on these four individuals. I'm asking members that we just focus on those four. Otherwise, we're going to get sidetracked and get into some other business. But I'm not going to suppress debate and discussion, but can we just stay on course as far as is humanly possible? Honorable Oliwe.
Thanks, Chair. Prof, a witness who came to see us before you indicated that Mr. Motswaneng was always making sure that the bargaining unit is happy. Was that done within the policies of the SABC, or was there something which you can term compensation for a favor?
Mr. Motswaneng did not seem to follow due process. In fact, it was not in the purview of Mr. Motswaneng to deal with bargaining units. The HR head who was here is the one with the outfit that deals with organized labor and those processes. He should not have been there. He's out of bounds.
What role did the chairperson of the board play when you were subjected to an executive who was interfering in you as non-executives as you were to take your decisions? Like, for instance, you are indicating that in board meetings, Mr. Motswaneng would come, and then if the decision is not as he wishes, he'll rant and rave. What role did the chairperson play to deal with that?
He enjoyed tolerance. Mr. Motswaneng enjoyed tolerance, if not support, from the chairman of the board. He was not called to order as we think he should be called to order. Certain board members had to prevail on him and call him to order. And I think that our chairperson should have played her role in firmness, pointing a direction, and also unifying us as a board. And I don't think that she did sufficiently. And if you like, that's one of the things that emboldened Mr. Mtsweneng, amongst others.
This character of an ill-disciplined person, as you are portraying in your statement of when you talk about Mr. Mtsweneng, at what stage did he display it? Before or after he was made permanent?
Oh, even before. Even before, I did not detail the discussions, for instance, during the time that Minister Karim came to visit us. When he asserts himself, he does not care who he's talking with, whether you're a minister or you're a board member. He would assert himself in that manner. He will drive his point. In fact, he will tell you he is not scared of you. If I'm not mistaken, the minister himself was told that. So that is behavior that is consistent. He showed a bit more comfort, of course, after the minister, the current minister came in. That's the longer time that we observed him. But during the time of the other minister as well, he behaved in the same manner. Here you are talking about Mr. Mtsweneng. That's the character you're talking about. And yes, of course, certain circumstances help a person act more the way they act. But that's him. And I don't think you'll see a lot of change in him unless, of course, you put him in a different environment and is managed differently, is led differently. But where?
You said in the beginning of your statement you have participated in many boards. But now when you were in SABC, you were subjected to a situation where executives were voting when board decisions are to be taken. Remember, the executives are reporting to the board. Didn't you find that an anomaly?
Oh, we did. As long as a person is not a director, does not have fiduciary responsibilities, they should not take part in board processes. If they are a board member and there's no basis for them to recuse themselves, yes, they can take part. But yes, we raise our eyebrows, we question it when a person participates in a board and they are not a board member.
The last one from me, Prof, is to say, whilst you were a chairperson of HR and RAMCO, what role did you play to boost the morale of staff? Because the picture you are drawing is a picture of staff that was demoralized because of the conditions under which they were serving.
Yeah. You see, board members don't manage, they supervise. One of the greatest things about leadership is getting out and staying out of your way. Never yield to a temptation to start doing the work of your managers or the work of your staff. We work through, unfortunately, we had a totally disabled, weakened chief executive who ended up going. We had an HR head who made a presentation here yesterday who was also disempowered. We prevailed on the chair to talk about these situations, to say, let's address these situations, because if suddenly we would be found walking the floors and sitting down with people and so on, you create a chaotic situation. The way we act is to put in place management that would deal with situations that need to be addressed. And that's the way that as boards we work. We do not get in and intervene and do the work ourselves.
Thank you very much, Prof. Honorable Khoza.
Thank you very much, Chair. Prof, thank you very much for being with us here.
Thank you.
And admittedly, you are an accomplished scholar in your academic field, and I must say that I respect that. And I also respect the fact that you've held many positions and served in a number of boards. Now, Prof, would you concede that the board, the SABC board, failed to discharge its duties in terms of the Broadcasting Act? of 1999?
I would say yes. The board had its power diminished over a period of time. And definitely, the board, what you call the board today, is not fit to hold office. But this is a process that occurred. The board, over a period of time, of months, lost its force as a board. The enthusiasm I talked about dissipated. That's why some of us resigned, because we were not feeling that we're able to do the work we're supposed to do.
That's fine, Prof. Thank you very much. I understand that. And you've cited a number of reasons.
Yes.
As to why that happened.
Yes.
But I want to say, Prof, there is a bit of circumvention of absolute truth in your responses.
Mm-hmm.
You've alluded to criminal motives, but you didn't substantiate that. And I want to put it to you, Prof, that probably one of the primary reasons for this are those primary motives. And I want to ask you to unpack those primary motives, those criminal motives you spoke about. Thank you, Prof.
Yes. Honorable Khoza, you will recall that I said that in the process of what you are doing now, you will be able to reach certain conclusions because of the facts that are before you. But you will avoid speculating and concluding on speculating. But you will follow through and check what could have been motives in this direction. When things happen the way that they happen, I would speculate and say what I've said, but I do not have the evidence. I am saying to you, you have instruments. You can access documentation. You can ask questions. You could even recommend a formation of another process that will be empowered to come out with answers such as this. And I think that's fair.
Okay, Prof. No, I understand you, Prof. I actually accept what you are saying. It's helping us to move forward. But maybe you might wish to tell us what was the role of the multi-choice deal, the TNA deal, the New Age, whatever deals that were there, and the digital migration. What role did all these factors play in the failure of governance at SABC? Because it's well and good to attribute all the failures to Saudi or the chair, the weaknesses of the chair. But there must be underlying motives behind the elevation of those individuals to this absolute totalitarian position. I fear a failed state. And that is why I want you to be honest with me, Prof.
I share the fear with you, ma'am. I share the fear with you, and I say that the questions you're asking are very important to ask. You are involved in an inquisitorial process, which is supposed to take you in directions where you'd find such answers. And I think, and I'm not being facetious, ma'am, I cannot come here and be facetious. I'm saying, ma'am, you are on the right direction. Those issues from where I sit as a board member, those issues seem to have a very adverse effect in the dynamic in the organization. The issues that you have pointed at seem to have rocked the organization. I refer to you to a very embarrassing situation of a minister, feeling that he's been so pushed and so rejected and so confronted that he says, look, what is wrong here? If you guys don't trust me, and if you think I have a motive other than my motive as your shareholder representative, can I take a lie detector? That's a very big thing to happen. So I'm saying, ma'am, that you have the power as Parliament. Parliament has the power to follow this through, and I would advise that this must be followed. Chair, I think I can only go, I cannot speculate.
No, Khoza. No, your time is up. Mr. Swart.
Thank you. And I just want to endorse my colleagues that have commended you with your background. Thank you, Professor. I remember when you were still on Transnet and the good work that you've done.
Thank you, sir.
And maybe just as a brief comment,
yes, sir.
If you can assist us with recommendations going forward, with your, in writing, not now, but in writing, you've made some very good comments here. Yeah. But dealing with this, I like the comment that you say some of these issues could be endemic to all SOEs.
Yes.
But now we're dealing with this particular SOE. And I would firstly like to ask you, have you been threatened or intimidated in any way before you came out? No, not at all.
No, sir.
Okay, because we did hear of evidence last night of that, so I'm grateful for that.
No.
Secondly, then, I wanted to ask you to comment because you received a letter from the minister on Christmas Eve to give reasons out of the blue. Then when you responded, if I heard you correctly, she seemed to say no, but she didn't mean it to come to you. Can you just clarify that?
Through her advisor. Her advisor actually told me that no, it was not meant for you, Prof. I said, but I've called the minister, she's not responded. Please tell the minister I've been trying to call her. I need clarification because I want to resign if I don't get an answer. And he came back to me on the phone and said, Prof, you know, the minister is shocked. She doesn't want you to resign. She's asking you to stay. I said, no.
Thank you, Prof.
I cannot get that from you.
But then there's another agenda at work here. How can it be that the minister is shocked and at this when she doesn't seem to know? It shows to me a dysfunctional ministry. Secondly, on the January, Mr. Krishnaidu testified the same thing here, that he received a similar letter, and that when he was driving, he says in January 2015, he received a letter whilst driving home. The minister called to apologize and said, I was an asset to the board and should not even contemplate resigning. He then goes further to say, this is a classic example of a dysfunctional ministry which compounded the problems of a dysfunctional SABC board. Now, surely, Professor Kumala, you'd agree with that there is not only what was going on at the board level and with the COO, Mr. Motswaneng, but also at a ministry level. There is something totally dysfunctional when a member of your asset, the minister doesn't seem to have known about those letters that were going.
Sir, I would take you back to my statement, and please, I'm going to ask you to take this statement very seriously. Shareholders or shareholder representatives should not be looked at outside the protocol that influences governance. They need training, they need orientation. I think for far too long in the public enterprises, this point has been ignored. The fact that a person yesterday becomes a minister, it does not mean that today they will know everything they need to know about business, about the Companies Act, and even other laws that govern the companies that they have been given responsibility for. There needs to sit somewhere in government, whether it's the Department of Public Enterprises, the presidency, or whatever, a training program, an intervention that helps those people who are entrusted with these resources, with these assets, to exercise the role that shareholder representative exercise. Because some of the governance, in fact, is thwarted by the impact of shareholder representatives. That's a very far-reaching statement, and I underline it, and I think it must be done.
You see, our role is to hold the minister accountable as well. And so we appreciate those comments. But we're sitting with a dysfunctional SABC and what would appear a dysfunctional ministry. And so we appreciate those comments, but our role is exercising that oversight, and we need to look into that as a useful recommendation for going forward. So thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swartz. Honorable Mhlanga.
Sawubona Mtungu.
Sawubona Baba. Mtungu.
Chair, the first question, just for clarity, who is the minister who wanted to take a lie detector?
Minister Yunus Karim.
Okay. The next matter, Chair, is Prof. are you aware of the outcry by the worker community, especially the journalists at SABC? Point 1.2 of them, 1.2, sorry, of the staff workers, of staff members there, who are complaining about how Parliament, the board, and the minister have failed them.
Yes, I'm aware.
And where do we locate their complaint? Within the structure of SABC.
Can you clarify? They are the SABC.
Yes. You were responsible for REMCO as chair.
Okay.
Now I'm saying for us to trace the unit, the board committee that is responsible to have dealt with these problems that we have, where would we locate it within the structure of
the situation of the SABC has much less to do with structures, with policies, etc. It has a lot to do with policies, with attitudes and behavior. It's things that are being done or not done. You're dealing with a situation here. It was said yesterday that there has been an exodus of staff, including middle and some senior management. When you do not have sufficient people managing the organization, that situation you're referring to is going to get worse. It's not going to be cured by a board structure. It's going to be cured by making sure that there are people in place. I would say the people in HR and REMCO who are there now must address the skills report, the skills audit report that was discussed not long ago in Parliament. They must look at what needs to be done to strengthen the organization in terms of human resources.
There was a person who sat in the board, a very junior official. Did it happen during your tenure? A person who was neither a CEO, a COO, nor...
Not in my time.
So, okay, during your tenure, Mr. Mtswening never sat in the board.
He was acting COO at the time.
At the time?
Yes.
Well, the information we have is that actually he sat there whilst he was a junior official, and he was actually dictating to board members. I assume it wasn't during your tenure.
It may have been during the interim board. You see, it's one of the things that if I missed it, I would be surprised, because we question things like that, Even at the times that we have questioned the behavior of Mr. Mtswening, it was during board meetings. If, if that happened and it was still junior to what he was during my term, it was maybe during the interim board time or in earlier board sessions.
The increments, do you know anything about the increments that happened outside the normal procedure?
That was before my time.
Oh, it was before your time. Okay. You are aware that SABC is a national key point, and you have staff there that were never vetted.
I know that it is a national key point.
The staff issue and the vetting?
The vetting of staff is something that happens as a matter of course at different degrees and levels. There are functionaries and structures within the organization that address that.
I'm talking about your very senior people that are not vetted, your very people that are appointed by yourselves at the board.
And there's nobody who I am aware of who we appointed and who was not vetted. The only person who was ever appointed during our time was Mr. Mtswening and also Mr. Matlala, who became the chief executive, I think, shortly before I left.
Chair, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Mukwena.
Thanks, Chair. Bob Kumar.
Yes, sir.
Just help me understand the character of the minister that we're talking about here. You received a letter in December that said that you need to explain your non-dismissal. And then when you questioned later on, you were then told that the minister didn't seem to know anything about it. Mr. Naidu alluded to the same sort of process. And it seemed that there were many other board members who is this a minister who made the decision, or the decision seemed to come from somewhere else in your considered view?
You are tempted to wonder if this decision wasn't influenced somewhere else, actually. If she says that she doesn't know about it, you'll recall, sir, that the public statement that was issued by the ministry was that she had not received my resignation yet. The advisor knew about the resignation, and he actually pleaded with me to withdraw it. And even before I put it in, he pleaded me not to resign. So I think that, you see, if you want to speculate, you will see a number of possible scenarios arising in terms. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I don't want to speculate too much. But there seems to be a trend of someone who didn't make the decision. It came to her from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Again, the appointment of Mr. Hlaudi as the permanent COO. A letter was presented to the board by the COO's representatives.
By the chairperson of the board.
Okay, but it's a letter that came from the CEO.
I think it was written by the COO's representative.
That's correct.
Yes.
It then occurs that at the meeting, a decision is made. Shortly after that, which is around 11 o'clock, the minister arrives and makes a speech to thank all of you for having made. In your considered view, again, is this a recommendation that came from the minister, from the board, or is it one that came from the COO himself?
We found it strange that the minister was actually on the premises and that she came in, and it did seem to be a manipulated process because it was strange in every respect.
Yeah, I'm painting a picture here, and the canvas seems to be telling me that the minister was not in control of what happened at the SABC. In fact, the minister got instructions from the COO. Am I on the right track from your considered view?
Mine is to give you the information that I've given you.
That's fine.
And you have powers that are greater than me.
No, that's
and
fine.
your scope is different.
The decision to investigate members of the board and other people within the SABC, and then the utilization of the Secret Service to investigate employees of the SABC. Was this matter discussed by the board, and what was the attitude of the board and
Not my board. Not the board that not during my time, and not by HR and Ramco that I chaired. Because if it was discussed during my time, I definitely would have raised the issue.
Last question, sir. Okay, then everybody seems to be blaming the delegation of authority framework for the power that seemed to have lied with the COO. But in your tenure, the MOI had not been amended yet. But you speak of a CEO who was undermined by the COO. What then was the impediment of the board to correct such a situation and to, in fact, put the COO in line?
The board had become divided amongst the people who seemed not to allow for the COO to be called to order was the chair of the board.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Conker, thank you very much, Honorable Mokoena.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Weighing in on what Honorable Fana Mokoena has just said now, Is it not given? You said, for instance, Prof, that you had a conversation, a meeting with the minister, and later on you received a letter. And when you tried to do a follow-up, no one knew about the contents of the letter, about the fact that you'd receive a letter that said you could resign, or you should advise them of the reasons why you should not be removed as a member of the board, right? Is it therefore not, when you are speaking to the advisor of the minister, that is it therefore not plausible to argue that even the letter itself could have come from somewhere else other than the minister?
Except the letter bore what purported to be the minister's signature.
Thank you. I think you've answered my question. Prof, there is on page, I think it's page 3 of the document that you've submitted to the committee, the very first bullet point there, you say the chairperson did not serve as a unifier of the board and the chief executive officer was not empowered and the executives were uncooperative, right?
Yes, sir.
And then on page 7, you talk about the acting CEO stated that he was the SABC himself.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask a question. Who were those executives who were uncooperative, firstly? Are you able to give us names?
Primarily, it would be the COO.
The COO.
Now, I may have spoken in plural, but the real tussle for power with the chief executive was with the COO. And people who challenged the CEO were not visible. The organization saw the theater of a COO, an acting COO who had usurped power from the chief executive.
Yes, I'm asking that question. I'll tell you why I'm asking that question. I think the uncooperative nature of the executive was demonstrated here a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted to find out who would be the ringleader in your view of that bad behavior or misbehavior, which is the uncooperativeness. But I think you've answered that question.
Yes.
I want to find out from you then, Prof, you talk about, I think it's on page 5, where you're talking about in this document that you've presented to us, which we thank you very much for doing that.
Yes.
You're talking about shareholder representatives needing orientation and training. What would, in your view, be the contribution of the shareholders or the shareholder representatives in the chipping away at the foundation of corporate governance principles at SABC? I know that you've cited inexperience as a contributing factor, but I think this point can be linked directly to what Honorable Koza said earlier, that out of this might also arise profit motives, the carelessness, the failure to do proper political oversight over the entity itself. I think you need to give us more details as to what would you say was the contributing factor. What role did they play in the chipping away of the foundation of corporate governance principles?
A conscious role player in the chain of governance will be very conscious of the parameters and will not stray into areas outside their bounds and will not allow people to come into the area to access them when they should not access them. Especially also be mindful of people who would be coming in to manipulate them or to cause them to behave in a manner that they should not behave. For instance, I keep saying, as board members, we don't do, and I'm trying to underline the parameters of power and prerogative. And I'm saying here that, many people have approached me and they've spoken with me, and my port of call is the chairman. If I don't get the chairperson, I also talk to other board members, but I avoid a situation where I go out of bounds. So I think it's very important for shareholder representatives to be mindful of the fact that they should not be accessed by staff, that they should be accessed through the board, through the chairperson of the board, and that some of the things that we see make you wonder. Some of the things that you see make you wonder. This is why I'm making this recommendation, that, this may be naivety, this may be inexperience, this may be unsuspecting response, but in order to sharpen the senses of a shareholder representative, train them. give them induction, give them orientation, and make them understand. Maybe Professor King must look more into that now. Maybe other people who are dealing with issues of governance must look at this more, because I don't think that it has been looked at enough. Can I just make a point?
Yes, follow up. Yes, you'll make that point.
No, Mr. Kwanka, your time is up, but you can make your point.
Yeah. You know, I just want to stress that what we are dealing with here, you may be looking at now as parliamentarians as something that happens out there. But board members are interviewed, are assessed, and are recommended by a structure of parliament. And then they are forwarded to the appointing authority for appointment. I think it's very, very, very important that we look at the stringency of the appointment of board members. And we also should look at what happens to get board members to a level to perform their functions the way that they should perform. I don't think that Parliament should take shelter in the fact that this thing is happening there at SABC and the board and the minister. You know, I think that Parliament must wonder, when we are all taking responsibility and we are all remorseful, I would like to call upon the relevant structures of Parliament to also take responsibility and be remorseful and look for ways in which they correct. How did it happen that certain people went through your net and you recommended them to the parliamentary, to the appointing authority, and they get appointed and these things happen?
Thank you, Prof. One question from my side, Prof. And it's just advice, maybe. I've been grappling with this thing since we started. The Companies Act, director's liability is very, very sincere, is very, very severe.
Yes.
Per the Companies Act.
Yes.
So my question that I'm grappling with, does resignation absolve you from liability? In other words, many of these things happened during your time, maybe, or during somebody else's time. Can we sit here and say, well, because Prof resigned, he's not liable according to the Companies Act? I just need to understand that, because it can't be that such rot happens under my watch. I leave the organization and I don't pay the price for it because I'm no longer theirs. I haven't understood it. With your experience, does resignation absolve you from your responsibility per the Company Act?
I think that I would take legal advice if I were you. Because if things happen at the time you are not there any longer, you cannot be responsible for those things. Yes, you could be looking for an answer if some of the things happened 2 years ago when a person is there. You know, that's a different question. You know, if a person resigns to run away, you're dealing with a different situation to a situation where people resign and then things happen after they have left. Those are two different scenarios. It cannot be that you have such a long tail that because you once upon a time you were in a board, whenever it turns this corner and that corner, you also go and take responsibility. I would think that a number of things must happen to you, including being paid board fees, including being insured. Then a board insurance must cover former directors as well, if that's the case, I would think. But I think this is a matter for lawyers. I don't have the competence to be more succinct in responding to that question, sir.
Siyabonga, Bab. Prof, as we have been saying, anybody from the SABC that is present here that would wish to pose a question? No? Prof, as we've been saying to everybody else during the course of these proceedings, this session with you might have come to an end, but ours runs until at least the 28th of February.
Thank you.
And I do know that members have asked you for some written advice in terms of recommendations and so on. So between today and the 28th, if there's anything that you'd like to bring to our attention or empower the committee with, please feel free to do so.
Thank you.
And if we don't see you between now and Christmas, may you have a very Merry Christmas and be blessed and have a prosperous New Year, sir. Thank you for attending.
Merry Christmas to you, sir. Thank you.
Very much. Honourable members, the next witness is here. We're running a few minutes late. We should have been halfway through that session, so I'm only going to allow a 2 minutes leg stretch and then we can start because we are running half an hour late. Thank you.
Did you know that Vilakazi Street is the only street in the world to have housed 2 Nobel Prize winners? Vilakazi Street in Orlando West, Soweto, southwest of Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, has been home to Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela's house was a modest family house from 1946 and still maintains those features. Archbishop Desmond Tutu still owns his house in Vilakazi Street since 1975 and often goes to stay there when visiting Johannesburg. Because of its popularity, the street has an influx of tourists. Restaurants with local cuisine have mushroomed around it, creating job opportunities for the locals and improving the lifestyle in the area. Orlando West High School in Vilakazi Street is known for its creative role during the famous 1976 uprising.
We are one of the 22 high-burden countries, and out of that we're number 6. Following countries like India, China, and with huge population.
Cough, night sweats, weight loss and fever, and cough being the most important of those. So, and especially if the cough lasts for more than 3 weeks, then you really have to worry and get tested for TB.
The motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use the elbow.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
AIDS and poverty did not deter Mpumi's success.
Being an orphan or coming from poverty or having seen what HIV and AIDS does to a person that you love takes nothing away from you. It means that you are part of a selective few who have had to face a very, very marginalized struggle.
Abuse is a lonely journey that needs compassion.
I came across as a very confident, ambitious person, but behind that mask was somebody who had serious anxiety problems, a person who had knots in their stomach continuously, a person who could be in company and would feel very lonely.
Being away from his birth country did not stop his hunger to succeed.
Boxing was the way out. Turning professional would give me an income. That was the solution to the problems I've had for so many years.
For more inspiring stories, join Bupulong every Friday at 17:30.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour. Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.